Sam, so here, like, this is the question that I've gotten all week, or not all week, for probably 48 hours. And full disclosure, the reason I struggle with it is because I come from an era and an environment where this would be blasphemy. Okay? So
Yeah.
I'm trying to unlearn and evolve with the times. But I get this question a ton. Hey, Dylan Raiola isn't playing very well, but how much of his backsliding or regression is on the coaches? Right? Like, so what I hear is we're like we like accountability, but we like it based on whether we like a guy. And I come from right. You're vibing with me. I can't wait to hear your response.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I played with some fellas, right? And I never felt like T. Fraze was bigger than the program. I never felt like LP was bigger than the program. I never felt like Zach Wiegert was bigger than the program. I didn't feel like Trev Alberts was bigger than the program. Like, we always talked about like this team unified thing. Do I need to get over that, or how is that partly our fault for speaking this narrative into existence?
That it's the coach's fault that Dylan isn't playing well?
That we we pick a side.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think the way that Dylan has been talked about by the coaches actually lends itself to it has to be the coaches, because
at one point they said we got to get everybody to where Dylan is.
Yeah, which I'll be honest with you, I did not really believe.
No,
I thought that was an interesting statement, and I'm like, I don't think that Justin Evans is not vibing on the level that Dylan is. So I think there's been some things that have been said, and I respect Justin Evans. That's what I'm saying. I think there's some things that have been said that have set him apart in some ways. And, as Matt Rule said in his Ohio State press conference, which I also don't think he should have said, is, do you know how hard it is to come up here and never throw a player under the bus, or whatever he was saying? And so you're seeing some of these moments break open.
Why did that bother you, Sam?
Because I thought it was a little self-congratulatory. Yeah, I don't need you to tell me that your job's hard. A lot of people have hard jobs and make a lot less money.
No, but wait. I don't want to go. I don't want to steal your. But
but that's just how I am. Like I'm like a blue collar person at heart. I don't need a coach to tell me it's hard to stay positive or anything like that. Like,
see,
I'll be honest with you. I did not love that speech in general, because I thought it was not really about the team, but mostly about, I don't know, whatever the coaches were trying to do. And B, it came after a loss. And C, and I did not do this yesterday today, but other people did. It came back to haunt him when people were like, well, how's that championship mindset? And I'm like, that's why you don't say that stuff.
Yeah.
Because somebody's gonna go full bore with it after the game, and then the next week they're gonna be like, well, you didn't play against UCLA, so how's the thing? I played it down at the time, and I'm playing it down now. Other than, I feel for him a little bit that's being thrown back in his face, because I understood where his heart was, but I didn't think that was like the right moment to pull out the 9-minute speech after you lose a game.
Okay, but why do we hate
It
context though, Sam? Why? Like, because the context of what he said was that was the first time that he saw a championship mindset. He didn't say it was like, we got to understand the difference between in the moment and present progressive, right? Like,
sure.
Because we can't just be dismissive and say sure, because at the very end he said, now we'll see what happens next week. Like,
because if we don't do it again,
it doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Like he said
that's why maybe you distill the 8-minute speech into it.
Oh, fudge. Okay.
That's why you have to be thoughtful about it.
Why can't we be better at how we receive the information? Right.
I think I was pretty good at how I received the information.
Well, I mean, I'm talking about generally speaking, because even in your answer, you're setting yourself apart from how everybody else maybe received it. Like it's just human nature if you think differently to say, well, not me, but everybody else. But that sounds like it's the one thing that you didn't like.
Well, I think part of what I saw in that statement is just that, like, because you ask about Dylan, right? And you ask about, whether you feel like he's being held accountable versus the coaches or whatever it is.
Or why did we pick sides?
And I'm just saying that within the context of coaching culture over the last however many years, you have seen this sort of like, well, it's never the kids. It's never them. It's always us. We did it. Yeah. Now, if you say that you didn't execute, you're throwing the kid under the bus, which I don't agree with. Rule said that too. I understand where he's coming from with some of the things that he's saying. I understand the context of them, but I just feel like we're in an era now where maybe because the players are being paid, like there was a Bear yesterday who didn't start. And the reason he didn't start is because he acted like a complete moron on the last play of the game against the Commanders. Mm-hmm. And his comment yesterday was like, I was a little hurt. And I'm like, you were a little hurt? You were hurt? I was hurt. You were hurt? You were dancing before the Hail Mary. And you did the wrong thing. Like, how could you be hurt? Maybe you hurt it yourself. Like, that stuff like that. Like, we've reached a point where, like, the people to whom we give the most ascribe the greatest amount of understanding and context are millionaires. It's like, okay, I get it. I understand it. Like, I understand. And Dylan Raiola is not a millionaire by his own account. But, I understand where people are coming from in terms of like, hey, it isn't his fault. It's got to be the coach's fault. And sometimes people will use people's salaries to justify why it's their fault. I totally get that too. But that's part of what's going on. I think Raiola has not played great over the last month. I'm sitting in the press box, and literally everybody around me is like, well, he must be hurt. I'm like, I have no idea if he's hurt. They're not saying he's hurt. Maybe he's hurt. I don't know. Like, he ran last week, and that was because, according to, one of the OCs, well, he subconsciously did it. And I'm like, I just think there's been, it's a program that's not winning right now. There's frustrating moments within it. In my rewind today, I point out that, like, Satterfield last week said he thought he was talking out of place by speculating why Raiola scrambled against Ohio State. And then he was like, I didn't have a conversation with him. And I didn't know he could run like that. He was almost like he was saying, hey, whatever this kid is, it has nothing to do with me. They've left me out of the conversation. He didn't say that, but the way he answered the question made it seem as though this guy over here, he's the quarterback, and I just call plays, and we hope that those two things sync up.
Yeah.
And you would know more than I about, like, how much Satterfield's talking to Raiola and whatever. But it reminded me of 3 years ago when they had Frost, and then they had Lubick, and then they had Verduzco, and then they got tired of Verduzco being in the box. So they put him on the field, and he's short, and he couldn't see. And he's like, I'm a hobbit, and I can't see. And it feels like there's a lot of chefs in the kitchen. And Dylan seems like he's one of the chefs. So I don't know. It's a tough situation, That's a long answer, but that's kind of where I think things are at a little bit.
That might have been your greatest segment. Sam, there's so much in there. I don't even know which part to start with.
I don't either. I'm trying to filter through here in real time.
Maybe you could fill in some things. Like, so here's what I would say.
Okay.
I'm not quite sure what's going. Like, when Dylan Raiola runs back into the game, and I feel terrible that I did not watch the two plays before to see what he was doing on the sideline. But when he runs back into the game, he's 15 yards down the sideline.
So I only know what's happening with him because real time Jessica is telling us. Like, she's giving a literal play-by-play. He's in the tent.
Did he warm up?
No.
Did he even throw the ball?
No.
What is he doing going back in the game? And, like, who's governing that moment?
Okay. All right. I had this conversation yesterday. I'm sorry, Ravi.
You probably ought to throw the ball a couple of times before you go back in.
Sam, let me ask you something. When you heard Coach Rule say, hey, that wasn't my decision, that, if he's good to go, he was cleared. Did you hear, A, I trust the medical team, or B, I'm not in tune with what was going on? What did you hear real time?
I heard A.
That he trusts the medical team.
Sure.
Yeah, me too. Okay.
But that's not the same. That's like he's not.
That's a sidebar. That's not a validate or vindicate.
Yeah,
I found it curious that a lot of people. I felt like a lot of people picked at that like he was. I'm like the guy was holding a play sheet. I'm pretty sure he understands where they are in the context of the offense. You know what I mean? Like I didn't.
Yeah, he did have a play sheet, didn't he?
Yeah.
Did he always have a play sheet?
Sam.
I look at it on.
What is wrong? Like, what is this? Is this Monday? It's just right. This is your segment, Sam.
So I'm watching the game again. I'm like, Matt Rule's got a big play sheet. And there's nothing wrong with him taking the whole thing over. In fact, I think that might be a way to do it. Eventually, Jim Harbaugh, and there was a moment in Jim Harbaugh's tenure at Michigan where he literally said that like 5 different guys were having input on each play, and then someone was saying it. And I can't even remember who it was.
It happens all the time. It happens not all the time.
And so eventually Jim Harbaugh just, he handed it to the one guy who went to Miami, and then it kind of came back to him, and then Sharon Moore was sort of doing it, and then Harbaugh was just doing it. And then Moore was doing it because Harbaugh got suspended and all this other stuff. So, like, I get that coaches have to move back and forth. But the moment in the game where Raiola runs back in, he's running back in the game, I'm just telling you that the reaction in the press box, and you were a couple of rooms down, is he goes down and people are like, what's going on? And people literally speculated he ran onto the field to like save clock. And I'm like, that's not what's going on there.
That's not what happened.
No, like you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't make that kid do that. But I noticed he was running from like 12 yards away. And I'm like, do they know he's going back in the game? Did he just make that decision, unilaterally? And I'm not saying that he wasn't hurt. It's just like it feels like things are not quite as tight as Rule would like them to be.
I've trained a little bit on this gym over on about 22nd and Sprague. And I'm just telling you, when you get hit in the kidney or like in the back like that, sometimes your body just shuts down and you're not sure when it's going to happen. Like I've been there. You get hit with a body blow and it's like, and you think like, I'm okay, it hurts. But then it's like, so I don't know. Cause I watched him jog. And again, I'm just getting the that's one of the things just because we're like good at. I'm getting the play-by-play that he's coming back on the field. So immediately our eyes snapped to where he is. And he seemed to be jogging okay. And he got ready to do something with his hands talking to the guys in the huddle. And it was like a sniper got him. Mm-hmm. So, and I looked at Sharpie and I was like, I don't know, maybe it's a spasm or like, I don't know. But I do know, like, I don't think that was some orchestrated, like, contrived deal. Like,
no.
You just don't put it. You just don't put him through that.
No. But here's my point: is that like the game that Marcus Satterfield is calling changes dramatically the minute that Dylan Raiola runs onto the field. And my question is, did the coaches know he was going to do that? Because Marcus Satterfield has to call a different football play based on what happens there. Like he no longer is calling the, let's run Heinrich Harburg as a tailback play when Dylan Raiola is running onto the field and he just took this massive shot to his back. And so my question is, and I guess I can ask Rule this, is did they know that he's running back onto the field? Because that changes what they're going to do on offense. And I'm not saying he wasn't cleared by the doctors. I'm saying like, there's a difference between being cleared by the doctors and the coaches saying, you go on the field because we are going to run different plays because we want you out there. And I just,
does anybody have any, because I've been, sometimes I don't know if this is what happened. Like short of not asking Dylan, sometimes when a quarterback is ready to go, he just goes back in. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you. Like, he just goes back out on the field.
Like, you're the starter. You just go back out when you're ready.
Yeah. Like, I've done that. Like, Christian will say, oh, hey, I'm ready. And he just goes, right? Yeah. It doesn't mean I don't have control of the situation. It just means, like, oh, he's the guy. So if you letting me know you're ready, then you're ready. So like, it could have just been as simple as that, and we're overthinking it. Right?
Maybe. I think it probably was as simple as that. But then, when then he grabs his back, and it's like, it's one of those moments where, anyway, as it relates to the offense, it just felt like on Saturday that the operation, and I understand what Rule's saying, but the operation seemed to be moving in a way that not only was like, hey, let's try to time this up right, but like, we're not quite sure what to call, kind of thing. Like we're a little bit panicky. We're not playing with the kind of pace that we probably can. UCLA's tired. We're giving them 32 seconds to rest. Like, their defense had time to kind of regroup physically after a lot of these plays. Somebody sent me a message, and it was a good one, that after the long throw to Barney, that's a point where you run up and you have a play ready to go, so they can't review that play. And you're playing with pace, and it felt like they were a little slow there. And just little things, Damon, where it feels like the operation isn't quite as smooth as it could be. And I don't know if that's because they're trying to figure out what will work for Dylan, because this isn't really about Raiola. I mean, it's not. He isn't playing perfectly, but then no player ever did, and so, like, you have to live with some of the mistakes that players make. It's the operation around him that I feel like just wasn't as good as it could be on Saturday. And I didn't think the play calling was as good as it could be. And I just didn't feel like the operation seemed to be moving with confidence. And I thought fans saw that too. And they were getting annoyed by the time it was taking to do everything. It just felt like the process was slow. That's just my perception of it. Rule knows way more than I do, and way more than I would ever know.
No, I mean, he can count, right? He can see that it's 21 plays in the red zone, right? I mean, that's a big number. To not be yielding the points you wanted, right? Yeah.
He knows his stuff. And so, like, I understood what he was trying to say as it related to the clock management. But from my own perspective, I'm like, man, I'd like to have 4 minutes to run that last drive, because I've seen this operation in 2-minute situations when Dylan's not out there, and it's a slog. I'd like to have a run. I'd like the opportunity to run the football a little bit on my final drive versus doing what they were doing. What's ironic is that Heinrich Haarberg threw a pretty good pass that was intercepted. It's just that the UCLA safety that came over is a really darn good football player, and he made a nice break on the ball. He dislodged Barney from the ball, and it was picked off by somebody else. It was a good play by the UCLA player. Haarberg did really nothing wrong on that play, in my opinion. He threw a good ball, and UCLA just made a better play. And the reality is UCLA had pretty good football players who might have just overall been a little bit better than Nebraska. And that's probably hard for Husker fans to swallow. But on Saturday, it seemed true. It seemed that UCLA was just a little bit better than Nebraska in some areas. And that probably was a cold water in the face.
Sam, how do you weigh whether it's offensive play calling, defensive lapses with guys that older guys that we think are good, that we think have a lot of talent, versus them just not executing, right? I mean, we brought up the execution thing with talking about Rule earlier, but like, at some point, do you just have to say, and DB brought this up, hey, we're not winning with you, we can lose without you, and play different guys? Like, I don't, like, how do you kind of weigh that in your mind while having this conversation? Because there's a lot of guys out there that we think should be making plays that aren't making plays.
Yeah. Are we thinking on the defense or on the offense?
Pick one.
Well, I'm going to defer my feelings on the defense until all the way to the end of the season, because I think I want to see it kind of play out, because maybe they'll come out and win 3 in a row. It's possible. And the defense will be the reason. They'll be like, you know what?
Sure.
They came through. I think, but it's interesting. I think that unit hasn't quite been what everybody hoped it would be this season.
Wait, which week though? Because while you're not wrong, like, which defense are we talking about? Because there are times they're really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And even when we didn't think they were good, statistically, they were still good. So, like, when you say that, and you're not alone. There's probably 90% of the people that think the same way. Like what are you talking about? Are you talking about Ohio State defense, or are you talking about first 24 plays UCLA defense?
I think if you were to ask the defenders themselves, they would say that they didn't play to their standard in at least 4 of the games this season.
4, okay, yeah, that's probably fair. That's probably fair.
And that including Northern Iowa. And
so their standard.
I think their standard and their expectations.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't think they feel like they've played.
No, I like that answer because I like the fact that it's you're talking about their standard. They didn't play up to their standard of defense. Okay.
Right. And so my point is that, like, if we get to the end of the season and they say, you know, we just didn't play up to our standards in half of the games that we played this year, then I think there's some questions you can ask and maybe some conclusions that can be drawn. And I think it may have something to do with, you know, maybe players were elite last year or great, and maybe that was the level, and they reached it, and they maybe duplicated it or came a little below, but it didn't get overwhelmingly better. I think that's possible when players are older.
Are you surprised that we're talking about defense? Because I was mad at Ravi for even bringing it up, and he wasn't even bringing it up. He just was echoing the sentiment that he was hearing over the weekend, and I'm like, of all the things and we could nitpick at the second. I get it.
No, I get it.
But I do like the fact that at least you said you have the wherewithal to say it's based on their own standard, not whether it's good enough to win games.
Right. So I've written almost exclusively about the offense. I did 2 weeks ago. I did again today. In 15 Big Ten games under Matt Rule, Nebraska's offense is averaging 16.6 points per game and 4.76 yards per play. And these are 100th to below national rankings in what you would consider conference-only games. These are not. So the reality is they're not scoring enough points to win Big Ten games consistently. Their defense is giving up, I don't know, somewhere around 18 or 19 points, I think, in those games. The defense is playing well enough to win Big Ten games consistently. The offense is not scoring enough points. And if we want to say, well, the offense's job is to protect the defense, and they've been doing that, that's fine. You can do that all you want. But the reality is that I think the primary issue is the offense. I'll defer on the defense mostly because by the end of the year, if they say we did not meet our own expectations in half of the games and we finished 6-6 or whatever it is, that'll be something worth going back and examining why. Because they did have. To me, the larger issue is on the offensive side of the ball. And I think it's a deal where Rule's going to have to make fixes either now, probably not now, but maybe later in his, in the off season, because I just don't think big picture, not small picture, big picture, this is a good enough offense to win, a Big Ten title. I just don't.
That's Sam McKewon from the Omaha World Herald. Sam, we appreciate it as always. Great stuff.
That's good.
That was fun.
Yeah. Thanks, Sam. We'll be back with more Hurrdat Sports Radio.